and Bend. I do think, ooh, recording in progress. I'll say that again then. So I'm going to start with my normal disclaimer, which is that I am a financial advisor at Merrill Lynch and Bend, retirement planning, investment management, that sort of thing. I am not a guide or a shop owner, but I spend a lot of time fishing, and I think I have some bona fides there. I've been in Central Oregon for 18 years now. I've been a member of Central Oregon Fly Fishers for 17 years and on the board off and on for 12 years of that. On the board again and run lots of outings, and I'm on the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife Restoration and Enhancement Board and lots of other stuff like that. So I have a series of presentations on Billy Chinook and the Williamson, the Deschutes that I've given to lots of organizations, but I'm not a professional. So, and it sounds like a lot of you guys have a lot of experience on Lake Billy Chinook and going after bull trout. So I encourage you to, add to my knowledge as well. I certainly always have stuff to learn, and am willing to learn from you all. But this is, I've been doing it. I've been going after Billy Chinook bull trout for over 10 years, and I've learned a little bit. So hopefully you'll get something out of this. So the attraction for me, and for those of you who saw my presentation on the Williamson, you're going to see a lot of similar stuff because I think the experience is somehow, for me, very similar. So like on the Williamson, bull trout can be big, often, not always. You can get some small ones. They're wild, which to me is very important. I'm kind of a wild fish bigot. They're native, which is not the same as wild. A lot of people use that terminology incorrectly, right? A wild fish could be a bass. Wild just means that it reproduced in that water. Native fish is something that was actually, evolved in that spot, and bull trout are both wild and native. They're challenging, as many of you already know. For me, I streamer fish for them. I'm stripping back streamers, and I'm sure you've all heard that term, the tug is the drug, and for me, I love it. There are other boats on LBC, but it's not like going down on the Lord Deschutes at Salmon Fly Hatch or anything like that. So there's, pretty much no crowds. And as a person who is working, I can get out there and have a really good 6 hours and get back to my desk after lunch and return calls. So here's my first fish, I think, just over, well, I guess that's 11 years ago now. And I think it's the first one I ever got. I was pretty happy there. And obviously a lot younger. So not only is it great fishing, but Lake Billy Chinook, I think, is just a beautiful place to fish. Early in the morning when I like to get there, as the sun is just kind of peeking over the canyon walls, I think it's just a gorgeous place to be. And even if I get skunked that day, I always have a good time. I want to acknowledge Don Ratliff. He is the guy who kind of first got me going here. He used to be the head fisheries biologist for Lake Billy Chinook at Portland General Electric. As you guys know, they operate the Pelton Round Butte complex of the 3 dams that create Lake Billy Chinook, Lake Centestus, and then the Pelton re-regulating dam. And they have a very large and impressive, in my opinion, fisheries biology group there at the complex. And Don is by all measures a true bull trout expert. Spent a lot of time talking to him, and I learned a lot about bull trout biology, both talking to him and reading his scientific papers. And as we're going to talk about here later, there's a direct connection between kokanee and bull trout abundance. And anyways, there's a picture of him and his dog and an 8-pound bull trout. So nothing wrong with that photo. So what are bull trout? I find a lot of confusion about this. They're they're a salmonid. And, you know, the salmonid family has lots of different parts to it. You know, we're most familiar, of course, with rainbow trout and perhaps steelhead, which are, as you guys know, genetically almost identical. Just a few strands of DNA that seem to separate them. And going down that list, we have bull trout, which are not Dolly Varden. For a long time, it was thought that bull trout and Dolly Varden were the same, but they're not. There are other char out there as well. So I guess I skipped that. So one of the subsets of the salmonid family are chars. And so, you know, brook trout are char and lake trout are char. And we have, you know, those here as well. They're introduced, they're non-native, but wild fish. And bull trout are the only char native to Oregon. Just an FYI for you. So bull trout throughout the Western United States are endangered, but in the Metolius Basin, specifically in Lake Billy Chinook, they're harvestable. So that's because there is a robust population in Lake Billy Chinook. And Lake Billy Chinook is the only place in Oregon where harvest is allowed. And I'm sure you guys are familiar with the regulations around there. One fish only in your possession, must be over 24 inches. The Deschutes and the Crooked River arms of Lake Billy Chinook are open all year. And, you know, I've caught bull trout, you know, in February, in January. It's not as fun out there then because it's often quite cold, but, you know, if you get a warm spell, why not? The Metolius arm of Lake Billy Chinook open March 1 to October 31st, so it's open now. And of course, as you all know, you need to have a tribal permit to fish on the Metolius arm. Metolius River harvest is not allowed. It's catch and release only. And much to my chagrin, as I found out after I was talking to a U.S. Fish and Wildlife biologist about catching a bull trout on the Crooked, you know, very low down. I said, "Oh man, that was something." I had a trout on, and the bull trout chased it, and then I said, "Yeah, I went after that bull trout and I got him." And he said, "You know, that's illegal." I go, "Well, what do you mean? How could it be illegal? You know, you can get him just a mile downstream in Lake Billy Chinook, but it is actually illegal to fish for bull trout on the Crooked or Deschutes rivers. So just keep that in mind. If you search the internet, you'll see lots and lots of photos of just these ginormous fish. Almost always been taken by anglers trolling really, really deep in the lake. And we'll talk about that here in a little while. But, you know, the state record is this 23-pound fish caught in 1989. I'm not sure if there's any fish that big in there right now, but you can see they can get quite large. So what is the habitat for Lake Billy, for these bull trout? And, you know, it's all of Lake Billy Chinook. They're everywhere. You know, I've seen them. I fish a lot in the lowermost stretches of the Middle Deschutes, like, you know, way down around where White's Creek comes in. And below, I fish very low on the Crooked, you know, just above Opal Springs. And I've seen bull trout in both of those stretches. Obviously, they're all through the Metolius River. And while the bull trout do, you know, go up the Middle Deschutes, they go up the Crooked, you know, they spawn in tributaries of the Metolius. That's the only place they spawn. They spawn in this place, you know, Candle and Jefferson Creeks, which is easy to get to, really. If you go to Bridge 99 and go on the west side and hike down, there's a campground down there, and the northernmost edge of that campground, which is also the southernmost edge of the tribe's reservation, is Candle Creek, and then Jefferson Creek dumps into that just above there. Um, as I mentioned, they're in the middle of shoots. They go up White's Creek, supposedly. I've never seen one up there. And as I mentioned, now that there's Opal Springs Fish Ladder open, they're in the lowermost part of the Crooked. So just as a, just some, if you can see my cursor here, just perspective. I'm sure you all know where the House of the Metolius is. Just down from that is Jack Creek, and just down from that is Canyon Creek. And so these four creeks are where all the spawning happens. And yeah, so oh, I didn't test this part. Whoops. Fish passage at Opal Springs Dam at the mouth of the Crooked River became operational on November 20th, 2019. So a little over 2 years ago, and a steelhead swam through it the very next day, which I thought was pretty exciting. There's a camera there that is triggered by fish movement, and it captures video, and the species of each fish is later identified. And at this point, tens of thousands of fish have passed through the ladder. The dominant species that goes up the fish ladder is this thing called a bridge lip sucker, which I did, and large scale suckers. I had no idea these fish even existed, but there are literally thousands and thousands of them that go up right about now to spawn. And it's interesting when I started seeing these videos of all these really quite big fish going up the fish ladder. I got on Google and I spent a lot of time learning about them. And there's actually a weird subset of people, almost as weird, I guess, as those people who tie with those exotic flies we were talking about. But there are people who really target these large scale suckers. As a matter of fact, there's a high-ranking TU official who has an entire blog about targeting bridge lip and large-scale suckers. And someday I'm going to learn how to fish for these, because there's a bunch of them down there in the Lower Crooked. Anyways, there's these things called chiselmouth. They're brown trout, bull trout, red band trout, northern pike minnow, steelhead, and of course whitefish. So as I mentioned, I'm on the board of COF, and it played an important role many years ago. And so did Sunriver Angler. I should have updated that bullet. Long time ago, I put together a website kind of explaining the need to have the Opal Springs Dam, and got a bunch of organizations to support that and write letters and do things like that. And SRA, Sunriver Anglers, way back then, also played an important role to get that initial funding for the fish ladder. And I'm not sure if this is going to work. I should have tested this, but nope. So I also have a blog called CO Informed Angler, or Central Oregon Informed Angler. And I see that this presentation is being recorded, and if you want to get a copy of it, I'm happy to send it to you. But if you go to those links, you can see videos of bull trout going up the Opal Springs fish ladders. Not the really huge ones. These are kind of the more moderate sized ones, maybe 20-ish inches, maybe up to 24. But they're certainly going up the Crooked River, and I apologize for not having have that all set up for you. Maybe at the end, if we have some time, I'll go to that site and pull it up for you. Apologize about that again. Anyways, so if you want to see some cool videos of bull trout, that's the place to go. All right. So life cycle. So they spawn in September in four creeks, as I mentioned. Jefferson, Candle, Canyon, Roaring, and Jack. And the reason is because they have very cold water, even colder than the Metolius. For bull trout to successfully spawn, must be under 48 degrees, the water temperature. And because of that cold temperature, bull trout are the only fish in these streams. And it turns out that there are actually 3 relatively distinct species of bull trout. The Jefferson Creek, subspecies, the Candle Creek subspecies, and then the Candle Creek, Canyon/Roaring, and then Jack Creek. So those are 3 separate distinct kind of subspecies. Each has its own preferred tributary. They live in the tributaries and the Metolius for about 2 years, eating each other often. And then the survivors mostly head out to Lake Billy Chinook, although some do stay in the Metolius. I'm sure you've had success, as I have, of fishing for fish in the Metolius. And I will tell you that I vastly prefer fishing for bull trout in the lake over the Metolius, because my experience, at least, is when I hook a fish in the Metolius, they are really good at not being landed. They go down to the bottom, they wrap around logs, they wrap around rocks. They're escape artists, and that's not always the case, but it happens too frequently. Versus in the lake, they're sport fish. They're not going to go wrap around a tree or a rock or a log or something, because it's just too deep. And so, if you hook one up, you're probably going to land it. And they run and they jump, and it's fun. Sexual maturity between 4 and 7 years. They can live all the way to 12 years, very long-lived species. And so mature fish start moving up the Metolius in preparation of spawn as early as May, and then return to Lake Billy Chinook in November. So one of the things that I've done, and I'm not going to focus on it or touch on it really much at all in this presentation, is, going into the lowermost parts of the Metolius, the Monte campground, and then hiking up and fishing for them, in August, September, November. But that's a whole different talk. So they grow to be quite big, and turns out that bull trout actually have an anadromous strain. So I'm sure you've all read about the Elwha River in Washington, and the really amazing dam removal that happened there, and lots of interesting studies about how quickly various anadromous fish recovered. And one of the interesting things that happened is that these anadromous bull trout, started going way up the river, up above the dam, to find new tributaries to spawn where the water is even colder. But they'll go out into the ocean. They'll feed there if there's a lot of food, and then they'll come back in to spawn. So that's interesting tidbit as well. I don't think that in the past, I'm sure you're aware of this. In the past, bull trout were widely distributed throughout the Deschutes River as well. And I've actually caught a bull trout in the lower Deschutes, in the uppermost section, kind of around Warm Springs. They don't go much further below that. And the bull trout that I've caught there, I'm pretty confident went out through the fish capture facility there at the Selective Water Withdrawal Tower. So PGE will pass bull trout downstream and upstream if they go through the traps. But I don't think that those fish were ever anadromous. I don't think they ever, well, ever is a long time, but not for a long time ever, made it down into the lower Deschutes and then out through the Columbia. Anyways, a little digression there, sorry. So as you guys all know, the Pelton-Round Butte Hydroelectric Complex was finished in 1964, which created Lake Billy Chinook. There was an attempt when the dams were built to have fish passage. there are still existing fish ladders there if you go and look around. And those fish ladders were quite effective at letting fish go downstream, but the fish could not negotiate them back up into Lake Billy Chinook. And so within just a couple of years, Chinook and steelhead, were eliminated in the upper basin, and the sockeye that were trapped turned into kokanee. And I'm sure you're all familiar with the fact that, kokanee salmon, sockeye salmon are the same species. One gets out to the ocean and one lives in a lake. So, kokanee primarily spend their lives in the lake. They do spawn up in the uppermost stretches of the Metolius. And if you haven't, you really need to go up to, the headwaters in the fall sometime and just look at the amazing numbers of spawning kokanee up there. But kokanee are filter feeders, feeding on zooplankton, which are microscopic animals and the immature stages of larger animals. But they're very territorial, and they will strike flies and lures. And I'm sure if you haven't, you should go off and catch some kokanee sometime and eat them because they taste great. Kokanee reach maturity after 3 to 5 years, spawn in the uppermost reaches of Metolius, as I spoke or previously said. And they are the primary prey of bull trout. So kokanee, not just in Lake Billy Chinook, but throughout California, Oregon, Washington, they're notorious for population booms and busts. And the biologists don't know why. One year there'll just be this huge boom in population, and the next year they'll just be, half or a third as much. And again, a lot of speculation as to why that might be, but no real knowledge. And bull trout populations react accordingly. If there's a lot of food, then there's going to be a lot of robust fishing for bull trout. And in 2017, which is the last data I have, said there was a 500,000 kokanee in Lake Billy Chinook, averaging 9 inches. So that's a lot of food. And as the photos on the left show, here's a bull trout that actually Don Ratliff caught, and it started regurgitating this kokanee, as it was being caught. And I just want you to notice the size of that fish. And if you can throw a fly that big, hats off to you. I can't. And as the text there says, a bull trout will eat a fish up to 50% of its own body length. So pretty impressive. And as you can see in the text there too, it says still took the author's lure. So as much as I respect Mr. Ratliff, he was a gear guy. I won't hold that against him too much. So I'm sure you all have heard about the selective water withdrawal tower, in Lake Billy Chinook. It's called the selective water withdrawal tower because it allows water to be captured and then released from either the bottom or the top of the reservoir. Became operational in 2009. And since that time, literally hundreds of thousands of Chinook and steelhead fry and smolts have been planted in the Crooked, the Milda Chutes, and in the Metolius. As of last spring, no more fry have been planted. It's all smolts. And of course, the difference is, I'm sure you're aware, is, fry are little guys, 1 year old and less, and smolts are larger, a couple of years old. And there's a long story about why that's going on. And if someone wants to talk about that later, I'm happy to explain why only smolts are being planted now. And just on timing, Chinook smolts are first. As a matter of fact, the last Chinook smolt planting was a week ago. And then now we're getting into steelhead smolt release. And this has really changed the game for fly anglers, and I'll go over that in a second. But more pictures of me, a much younger me, right about 10 years ago with a couple of fish. So when is fishing season? Now, again, I'm talking about in the lake, not up in the river. But it really has to do with kokanee and then when these smolts are out migrating. So kokanee, are very temperature sensitive as well, 45 to 55 degree water. In the summer, they'll go deep to find it, way deeper than we can get with fly gear. It's not, if you have a fish finder and you're looking at these things, you'll see they're, 50 feet down, 80 feet down. So that's why, you see those people out there with trollers and their big outriggers and all that stuff, because they're going down to get them. But there are times when they're, much closer to the surface. And of course, the bull trout follow them up. And light is also a very important consideration. So zooplankton, which of course are the food that kokanee are after, are very light sensitive. So kokanee follow the zooplankton, bull trout follow the kokanee. So we'll talk about light here in just a little while, but basically the best time to fish is when light is not directly or strongly on the water. As I mentioned, steelhead and Chinook smolts migrate from March through May. And what's interesting about steelhead and Chinook smolts, and there's been a lot of studies by PGE since 2009 about the migration of these smolts. And what we've learned, because some of the smolts that are released with things called pit tags and other telemetry techniques, so you can track them, you can kind of follow where they're at. And what we know about the Chinook and steelhead smolts is they like to stay near the surface and near shore. And they also like to move at night in low light. And one of the things that PGE has done to improve the smolt success, or the success rate of released smolts, say in the Crooked River, making it to the selective water withdrawal / fish capture facility, is releasing them at night, because that's when they like to move, or at least in low light conditions. So this is what's really changed the game for fly anglers, is they're near the shore, often in coves. They don't like the really deep water, so we can get them. And you're going to see a lot of pictures here of one of my sons, and if you're at my Williamson presentation, you saw a lot of pictures of him there as well. But there's a couple of nice fish he got in 2017. I want to point out that bull trout are not always monsters. Especially early in the season before the smolts bring the big fish up to the surface. This guy up here in the upper right is a brown trout, and over here we've got a little small bull trout. I didn't measure these guys. They weren't big enough to get out the tape measure, but I think they're right. That's a really big net that they're in, and they're right around 14 inches. And we'll talk about techniques here more in a minute, but I caught both of these under a type 7 full sink line, probably about 10 feet, 8 to 10 feet under the surface, pretty close to the shore. And one of the things I love about fishing for these guys is it's not quite sight fishing, but if you're out there early in the morning and you're just kind of cruising slowly along the shore, if you see jumping small fish, well, they could be jumping just because they're happy, or they could be jumping because they're trying to get away from a predator. So when I see a jumping fish, I try to get over there, not too close, and cast into where they were jumping. And I got both of these guys on this big fly here, and I've got a tape measure there, so you can see. It's about 6 inches long. It's pretty heavily weighted. It takes a little bit of oomph to get that guy out, 50, 60 feet, to get it away from the boat enough to not scare off the fish. But, you know, and I got these guys in February. So you can catch them year round. So be warned. This is not fishing the Crooked River. It's not fishing the lower Deschutes during salmon fly. You know, fly fishing for bull trout is tough. I think it's worth it. And you know, there's my son again with two different bull trout. One on top, it's a pretty nice one. Obviously, we don't harvest these things, but I think that's certainly in the harvestable range. And you can see the fly here that he used to catch it. It's not a small fly. But again, it's tough. Temperature has to be just right. As I mentioned before, it's best when there's no direct sun in the water, you know, which typically means early and late on a cloudy day or in the shadow of a canyon wall. You know, the way I do it, not everyone does it the way I do it, but the way I do it is, you know, using sinking lines, you know, get your double haul working. And of course, you can just kind of, you know, troll around, or, you know, if it's really windy and you don't want to cast one of those really big flies, because it can be scary. I have hit myself. It can hurt. You know, you can wind drift. You know, this is not the easiest fishing in the world, but if you can catch, you know, a fish like this one up here in the right, I think it's worth it. So let's talk a little bit about, you know, what you need to do to fish for these things. You do need a boat. There's just no way to get around that. There's really no way that I've seen. I don't think there's any practical way to fly fish for bull trout from the shore. Up until this year, I used a drift boat with a 6-horse, you know, long shaft outboard motor, and then an electric trolling motor. Pretty slow, but I don't go very far. We'll talk about where I launch from. So I'm able to do it just fine. I will have to say that a month ago I did buy a lake boat. So next time I do this presentation, I'll show it. I am a fanatic about using a thing called a stripping bucket. I think that anyone who's ever used a stripping bucket, they'll be a convert. I don't care. You know, I did go on a guide trip once for these things, and you know, the guide had a great boat with this big flat deck, you know, fore and aft. It's a buddy and I, we were fishing, and I still was getting my line caught on my feet or on, you know, the little latches on the deck, you know, or keeping your line managed is, I think, one of the most important things in fishing. And a stripping bucket will do that for you. You strip out all your line into a bucket. You put, you know, a couple inches of water in the bottom. Your line is never going to get tangled. It's never going to get caught in anything. It's wet, so it's not going to get, you know, you're not going to get knots in it. You will add 20 feet to your casts, and you will have consistent casts because you're not getting your line caught. And I just can't emphasize it enough. I started out with a tall trash can that I got at Lowe's, and then I found these 20-gallon water cans, you know, that people use in hunting camps, and I cut the top off, and it's just the greatest thing in the world. There are places where you can fish from a pontoon boat or a kayak. I've seen people do that, but the drift boat, lake boat worked just fine. Okay, so where to launch? There are 3 public boat ramps. If you've been down to Lake Greeley Chinook, I'm sure you've seen the main ramp on the Crooked Arm, right? This is the road coming in from Culver, goes down really, really steep, and then there's this boat ramp. And that's where most people with big lake boats go, and frankly, that's where I've gone the last 2 times I was out, because I have a lake boat now. But there's the place where I've done the vast majority of my fishing is here on the Middle Deschutes Arm. There's a really great ramp right here. You know, if you're driving, you just kind of keep going over the bridge right here, and then up and over the I don't know, the hill there, and then you get here, and there's a great ramp right here. It's not nearly as crowded, and there's spectacular fishing right here, really close. You could easily launch a pontoon boat or a kayak and fish here. And then probably one of the really, you know, if you've got some time, Perry South Campground is just a fantastic place to fish as well. You know, it does get a little narrow down here, but it's easily done. You know, people go down there with RVs and boats and all that kind of stuff. You just have to be kind of looking out ahead of you and looking for turnouts if someone's coming the other way. The thing about bull trout that I found, since I'm a fly angler, is I want to be near shallower water, right? I'm not getting down 80 feet, I'm getting down 10 feet. And so I want to be in places where, you know, the water is shallower, or there's little coves, and they're in all three places. Like, right, if we go over here to the I think I'm going to talk about this more later, but in all three spots, you can find some of these great shallow water areas. I would say the one thing about the middle arm and the crooked arm is that the canyon walls here are a lot steeper. So if, like me, you want to be in places where the sun is not bearing down on it, you can fish longer here before the sun really, you know, becomes a factor. Out here, you know, you're just going to have a lot more sun on the water. And I want to point out that, you know, if you hire a guide, and I've done it twice now, years and years ago, this is where they'll take you. They'll take you right in here, typically, maybe up in here. This place here is called Chinook Island. This is called Box Canyon. And you know, I've heard guides call this, you know, the Miracle Mile. I don't know. I haven't had, and I fished these areas a lot. I was just there a few weeks ago fishing this area. I don't think it's any better than any other spots, but that's where they'll take you. So, oh yeah, let's fly Lake Billy Chinook using Google Maps. And so to do that, I need to get out of here. So help me out. Are you able to see Google Maps right now? Someone tell me.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to zoom out here. And I'm going to get up to Lake Billy Chinook. Bi-Mart. I was at Bi-Mart today, but that's not what I want to show you. So let's go up here. Okay, so here we go. Sorry, I'll get this working here in just a second. All right, so here's the Crooked River Day Use area. This is where the ramps are, or the ramp is there. And I have caught fish all along the shore here. And then over here, all along here. And it's because there are shallow water areas all along here and along here. And, you know, fish that are, you know, the Chinook and steelhead smolts that are coming down from the Crooked River, this is where they're, you know, resting on their journey out. So this is a perfectly fine place to fish. If you have a boat, it's easiest, but I personally have not been out here in a pontoon boat, but I have seen plenty of people in pontoon boats, you know, just along here, even along here. There's a lot of shallow water areas there. It's a perfectly, gosh, I wish that wouldn't happen. Let me do it this way instead. Maybe that'll change it. So, plenty of good fishing right in here, close by to the ramp, and, check it out sometime. Where I have fished primarily is right here. You can see this little road here going down. And that is where the Deschutes arm ramp is. And this whole area right here is just great. Those pictures of my son with the fish were all right along here. And here's another spot where you could easily be out there with a pontoon boat. Now, if the wind comes up, you might have a bit of a problem, get the heck out of there. But it's great. Those small fish, I had those pictures from me in February. I caught them right in this little cove right here. And so just all along here, it has exactly what I'm looking for, which is, shallow water, out migrating smolts from the Deschutes arm. And, if you're adventurous and you've got a boat, a better boat, you can go all the way up the Deschutes arm. And this is gorgeous up in here. And, right about here is where you can't get any further. And there's a marker that says you can't fish anymore. But if you fish up in here, you'll catch red bands, you'll catch browns, and you'll catch bull trout. So that's kind of fun. And then if you've got more time, because it's probably another 45 minutes or so, you can drive over here to Perry South. Now, someday when I'm retired and I've got lots and lots of time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up camp here. I've done this overnight once or twice, but I'm going to set up camp here for a few days. And even when it's not officially open, the gate is open and you can go in there. And they've got a great little ramp here, and there's a nice little dock. And the nice thing about staying there is that you can fish early in the morning, and then in the middle of the day, go back, take a nap, have lunch, drink a beer, whatever turns you on, and then fish again in the evening, because I'm all about fishing when there's not as much light on the water. And this is to be honest, this is probably the best stretch to fish, because not only do you have out migrating Chinook smolts and occasionally steelhead smolts, but you got other kokanee smolts coming out. And all along here on both sides, there's great fishing. There's these little coves. There's some houses along here. Right in front of those houses can be very, very good. This little cove here can be good too, although if you're going to run into other people, that's going to be where you're going to run into. There's a neat little cove right here. And even when I was in my drift boat, I would get in here and I would go all the way over here to Box Canyon, which is also another really cool spot. And again, here's Chinook Island. Now that this is a fair distance. You're not going to get over there in a kayak or a pontoon boat, but you could certainly fish, with a pontoon boat all along here. And I've had fantastic fishing all along that spot there, and in this little cove here. So, these little spots here are what attract the smolts, and that's obviously what's going to attract the bull trout. So, any questions about any of that? Everyone's on mute, sorry. I've been up in this spot many times, but I've never caught something up in there. I don't know. I'm not sure why. Maybe it just wasn't, the fishing gods weren't smiling on me. And and right in here in this little bay I've caught a few fish, but mostly it's kind of right along these edges, all along here in these little coves and etc. Okay. So how do I get back to where I was at? Whoops. here we go. I'm gonna have to scroll down a whole bunch here, sorry. So that's where I fish. You know, I'm sure other people have got other spots they like to fish and other experiences, but that's where I've caught my fish. So how do I fish? Again, I've talked to other people who do it different ways. This is the way I fish, worked for me. You know, you could easily fish with a 5-weight rod. It's just if you do get into one of these, you know, 24, 26, 28-inch fish, you know, 5-weight is going to be underpowered. So I typically fish with a 6-weight rod. I also bring an 8-weight rod along, and I'll tell you why here in just a second. I'm a big fan of sinking lines. You know, the bull trout are up closer to the surface, but they're not on the surface. And so you need to get down to them. And I use type 3, type 7. I used to use, I use type 8 as well, but mainly on the 6-weight, I use type 3 and type 7 lines. And I'm a big fan of uniform sink rates. So I want the whole 80 feet to be sinking. And what's happened in the last handful of years is that those lines have become hard to find. And what you mainly find now are lines that have a 30-foot sinking section, you know, at the head, and then maybe an intermediate or something. And those lines are easier to cast. There's no doubt about it, and that's why they're popular. But you're not going to get down as far. And you know, I'm casting out, you know, even with a type 7 line and counting to 30 before I strip back. So, because I want to get down, I want to get down 10 feet or 8 feet. And right now, as far as I know, and I look once a year, the real Fathom, not the Fathom Clean Sweep, is the only line that I found that has that uniform sink rate throughout the entire length of the line. I use straight leader. There's no reason to be you know, delicate about this. We're not throwing out dry flies and you know, we're casting these big things out there. We're letting them sink. And you know, you should have a leader tippet combination, you know, as long as you can cast. You know, it's 6 feet is probably fine. 8, 9 feet would be a little better. My typical setup is, you know, 3-foot 0x to a swivel, you know, a little micro swivel. You can get them at your local fly shop. And then maybe 3 or more, you know, maybe up to 5 feet, depending on the size of the fly, 3x to the fly. There's no reason to go any lower than 3x. These are apex predators. They're going after anything that moves. You know, this is not being delicate. And the swivel is critical because if you're casting big flies, then in the air, they'll spin. And if you don't have that swivel, then the line will get kinked up. And basically after every cast, you'll have to, you know, pull your tippet out of the water and kind of let it dangle and then have it, you know, untwist. And that only works for a little while. So, you know, get a heavy duty butt section like a 0x, and then a swivel, and then 3x to the fly. And again, it'll just make your casting and your presentation that much better. I learned that the hard way at, you know, over a few years of doing this. So I personally take 3 rods. And I grab one based on how deep I want to go and the size of the fly. So, you know, I use a 6-weight with a type 3 sinking line for smaller flies, or if I just, you know, if it's a really shallow area. Now I will tell you that we'll get to flies in a second here, but some guys, you know, throwing out just, you know, woolly buggers. So you don't have to have these monster flies. And I know guys who do just fine on woolly buggers. But even then, I'd want a type 3 to get down to them. I use a 6-weight with a type 7 sinking line for Again, for smaller flies, bigger than a woolly bugger, but smaller than some of these flies I'm going to show you. And then I use an 8-weight, not because I think I need that much rod to land the fish, but when you're casting a really big fly, you just need the power in the rod to get it out there. And again, you know, I'm trying to cast out, you know, at least 50 feet from the boat. You know, you don't have to cast out that far. For me, it's just, I love casting. So that's what I do. Here's something I haven't used, but I need to order it. So there's this thing called a Feathercraft Power Streamer Floral Carbon Furled Leader. And it's basically the same kind of idea, which is, you know, you've got this big, heavy duty butt section. In this case, it's you know, like 7.5 feet. And then they've got a swivel on the end, and then you put just like 2 feet or so of a tippet off of that. And you know, the idea here is to really be able to turn over those big flies. $17 each is a little tough for me, but anyway, something, if you really get into it, you might want to look at some of these big, you know, heavy duty furled leaders for butt sections. So, technique for catching these fish. Well, as I mentioned, you know, they are apex predators. They're at the top of the food chain. I think the only thing the bull trout are afraid of is other bull trout. And I'm sure, like you guys, you know, many experiences of hooking a trout, you know, decent sized trout, you know, maybe 14 inches even, and have, you know, bull trout chase it. So they're after big stuff. You know, how do you mimic a fish? You know, if they're after a kokanee or a steelhead or a Chinook small, you know, how do you mimic that? You know, you tell me. Someone's got an idea, you know, help me out here. You strip it really fast. Some people say, oh, you got to strip it fast. You strip it erratically. I don't know. You know, the gear guys, they just, you know, they're just cruising along at a constant slow pace, and they're not doing anything special. And I've caught fish doing that, right? I know if I'm having a bad day or it's getting windy or something, I'll get my 8-weight out and I'll put a big fly on there, and I'll, you know, with my type 7 sink line, and cast it out there and let it go down. And sometimes I'll, you know, get my electric and I'll go really, really slow and maybe strip it a little bit. And sometimes I'll go really fast, you know, as fast as I can go with an electric motor. And I've got fish both ways. The bottom line is I don't have any one technique to tell you that is the way to catch these bull trout. And frankly, I just kind of mix it up just to entertain myself. You know, I've caught them with little slow 3-inch strips. I've caught them with big, you know, 2-foot long fast strips. I've caught them, you know, just letting the line come down, and just as I begin to twitch it back, there's a fish on. Kind of like with steelhead, I think the key is to cover the water and just hope to find willing fish. You know, so I don't anchor up. I don't stay in one spot. I'm just kind of slowly moving along and casting, you know, offshore, casting in really close to the bank, and then stripping it back. And, you know, if it's in a shallow water area, I'll cast it in really close to the bank and strip it really fast so it doesn't hang up, and then, you know, kind of slowly strip it back and count till it gets down to the depth I want. Whoops. All right. One of the key thing I think is to look for jumping bait fish. And by bait fish, I mean, you know, smolts, which may or may not be a sign of bull trout predation. You know, I've found these little schools of jumping smolts, and, you know, I got over to them and I cast into them 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 times and nothing. But often, you know, if you're there again early in the morning, late in the day, you'll be amazed at how many jumping smolts you'll see. And as far as I'm concerned, I want to fish where the bait fish are, and so that's where I go. So obviously it's, kokanee early in the season, and then Chinook and steelhead smolt. So question always comes up about flies. Frankly, I think this is the least important piece of the puzzle. I don't know how to match the hatch of a kokanee or a Chinook smolt. The picture on the right there is something I got off the internet. I've caught many steelhead and Chinook smolts. They will hit your fly, but for whatever reason, I never took a photo. That's pretty close to what you'll see out there. If you see a jumping fish, that's a Chinook smolt, so that's on the bigger side. But steelhead smolts are somewhat smaller than that, and the kokanee are a little bit smaller than that, but they're pretty big. So how do you match that? Well, I can't cast a fly that big, no way. So I use smaller flies, but what do? Do you use crazy colors in your flies? Well, the gear guys do. If you look at some of the lures they're using, it's like, wow, why would anything hit that? But they do. And so I've tried everything, leech patterns to 10-inch flies, every kind of color. I think basically, go get a fly at your local fly shop. Every fly shop has got, the magic bull trout fly. I've bought lots of magic bull trout flies. They don't seem to work any better than the other ones. Lots of bull trout flies online. And I use a lot of saltwater flies. Unfortunately, I've become kind of hooked on saltwater fishing over the last handful of years. And so I've got a bunch of those, and they work just great. So here are an example of some of the flies that I use. And again, I've caught plenty of bull trout on the Metolius using, size 10 red copper johns. So believe me, throw out there what you're comfortable throwing out there. But these are the flies that I use on Lake Billy Chinook. And again, I've said it before, I know guys who just use woolly bugger type patterns. And the nice thing about those is that, they're easy to cast, right? If you look at, these are all heavily weighted flies. And here you got, this is rabbit fur. Oh, and the reason I have the tape measure up there, you can see how big some of these guys are, right? Some of them are pretty big. But this guy here is, 5 inches long, and it's rabbit fur and big dumbbell eyes. That thing is a real pain in the butt to cast, but it works. I showed you some pictures earlier today of my son with fish using this pattern. Here's another. I guess the thing that I like about all these flies is they have big eyes. Big eyes to me seems to be the magic thing. This is one of the magic flies that one of the fly shops sold me. It works, but it's no better than this guy right here. So here's a fly I would cast with my 6 weight with a 3X or a type 3 sinking line. Here's my 8 weight kind of fly. This is a big fly. But you just have to kind of find what you're comfortable casting and experiment. And that's it. I hope that was marginally useful for you.
Anybody have any questions for Yancey? I think there was one in the chat about how you strip, but you kind of went over the how do you strip.
I strip to keep myself occupied. Yeah, and really this is the part where, I know a lot of you have caught a lot of bull trout. So, if there's something that you're doing that's different, please speak up. Again, I've caught a lot, I spent a lot of time out there, but, there are a lot of ways to do this. So I'm happy to hear other people's perspectives as well.
I missed it.
You can ask.
Oh, are we unmuted?
You're unmuted.
Kimbo, it looks like you're...
My husband, Mike.
Oh.
Did you go over what temperature you like to fish when they're most active?
Yeah, so it really has to, so it's an interesting question. So the temperature is a function of the zooplankton and the kokanee, and what temperatures they like, and then the bull trout chasing them. So the kokanee like 45 to 55 degree water temperature. So and the zooplankton like sunlight off the water. So that's why I'm really kind of bigoted, I guess, about fishing in low light conditions, cloudy, early in the day, late in the day, in the shadow, because the zooplankton will be up, the kokanee will be up. If it's over 55 degrees, the kokanee are not going to get up there. And the bull trout like it, you know, about that same temperature, but they'll go up when it's a little bit warmer if there's food there. So one of the best years I had, and this is going to sound weird, but was a year when the water temperature was a little bit higher than that. And there's an algae, a pretty consistent, not too thick, but there's a pretty consistent algae bloom. And it's kind of gross to fish in algae, I know that, but it cut the light down and the bull trout stayed up near the surface longer during the day. And I was able to fish longer in the day. So algae is another component in this whole thing. But certainly once you get up around 60 degrees or something like that, it's over. Pretty much. At least for the big guys. You know, there's always the junior size or smaller size, juvenile is the word I was looking for, bull trout, you know, 14, 16, 18 inches, who, you know, they're hungry, right? They're being out competed, so they'll be up. But if you want to, you know, get a chance at that, you know, 24-inch plus, 55, maybe 60 is about as warm as I've been successful. What do you think? Does that match what you've experienced?
We went out, how many, 2 weeks ago? 3?
Yeah, about 3 weeks ago.
And it was 45 degrees.
Perfect.
I caught four fish, but it wasn't, I've heard stories of people catching 60 fish in a day.
On flies?
Yeah, well, that's what Scott from Flying Field said. Did he say 60?
You say, well, 40? Between two people,
well,
between two or three
40
people.
maybe.
That's an amazing day. I've heard of people, like the best day I've ever had is like maybe 8.
Okay.
And
I'd be happy with 8.
I'm way happy with 8. Yeah, I've heard stories, and it's really a function of a kokanee abundance. So, you know, earlier presentation I was talking about how there's these huge boom bust cycles in the kokanee, and we don't know what's going on this year yet because it's too early. But the biologists don't know what causes these incredible boom bust cycles. But when you have these big booms, it seems to be cyclical. It's the one thing that Don Ratliff, the PGE biologist, talked about. He talked about this kind of cyclical nature of the kokanee populations. And on those years following a huge kokanee population boom, I've heard about people having, you know, 20 fish days. Unfortunately, I've not experienced that myself, but I've heard those stories.
Me either.
But you had 4 fish in one day?
2 days. We fished on a Saturday though. Most of the fish I caught 4. You caught
3.
No, 4. Well, I caught a small one.
Yeah.
Discounted that. But I caught one small one.
Hey, you should give this presentation. You know what you're doing. What kind of flies were you using?
A lot like your flies. I caught them on brown flies and white flies.
Yeah. A lot of like lefty deceiver kind of things.
Kind of like Clousers.
Clousers, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, they're predators, right? And they're going to go after meat. It's kind of that simple. So the bigger the fly you can cast, the better, in my opinion. And as long as it has a big eye.
Yeah, the big eyes.
I use chain eyes. They're not big, but I also don't cast heavy flies either because they're hard to cast. I just use a heavier. I just use a sinking line and it gets it down.
Yeah,
plenty.
Yeah, that works too. I mean, as long as you're patient, if you can have a lighter fly, there's no doubt about it. As long as you have a sinking line and you're patient and count and let it get down, right? Well, one of the things that took me a long time to learn, you obviously know a lot about this as well. So, but is you know, when I was fishing, I'm moving slowly, and if I think there's like a good possibility of a fish being there because there's like a jumping bait fish, I'll count to 10. and I'll cast again, I'll cut to 20, and I'll cast again, I'll cut to 30. And having that discipline to let the line sink really makes a difference.
I'm interested to hear about if you see the kokanee schools jumping, because I've been out in the lake and sometimes in really deep water, you'll just see these random piles of jumping kokanee, and I've tried to fish around them hoping that they were being chased by a bull trout, but it never seemed to work out that way.
Yeah, I will say it's hit and miss. I've had experiences like up the Crooked Arm in particular, and mainly because I fished there more than I fished the Metolius up until this year when I got my lake boat. But when I was still in my little putt drift boat, I'd go up the kokanee and the Deschutes arms, and yeah, there would be like these huge balls of kokanee jumping for 2 hours. I mean, it was astonishing. And I would cast in. And so I talked to some biologists about that, and they said, well, what will happen is that there'll be a ball of zooplankton there, and the fish will just go crazy. And as long as the zooplankton's there, then so like I said, jumping fish I think is a good place to go to, but it's not guaranteed, unfortunately.
Yeah, it seemed like they're in such deep water. It's not like they're along the shore where I see those jumpers too.
Yeah, the balls are typically, like you say, further out. They're not trying to be, they're so focused on feeding themselves that they're not as focused on, survival at that point.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Come on, some of the other guys have fished out there. What's your experience? Let me know. Kimbo, you're on mute.
You have to unmute, Kim. Down at the left-hand corner, the microphone.
Can I hear? Can you hear now?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was just thinking on the stripping. This has happened a couple of times with us. If there are jumping fish, and you're pretty sure there's some bull trout in the area, sometimes if they're really active, you can cast out there, and they will take that streamer before you take your first strip.
Yeah.
You've probably had that happen too.
Yeah, like I said, I'll cast out sometimes, and on the first little tug, boom, fish on. And
yeah.
You just have to find the willing fish. Who's the guy who wants to play? Let's go find him.
Right.
Yeah. So the bottom line is that this is not like going to the Crooked River and catching 20 fish in an hour, right? It's just not. You have to enjoy the experience. You have to get into the whole gestalt of going for bull trout. But I gave this presentation to Central Oregon Fly Fishers last year, and one of the members contacted me about a month ago or a month later. He said, it took me 4 trips, but on that 5th trip, I got 8 fish in a day, and I was jealous. Wow. But then it was like, he did it, right? And so, you just can't tell.
What's your experience on the size of the bull trout on, say, Crooked versus Metolius arm? So the biggest fish are going to be in the deep water on the Metolius. Okay.
But, the biggest fish in my presentation, those were on the Deschutes arm. And maybe that's just because that's where I spent most of my time. But, the bull trout are pretty evenly distributed, especially right now during the out migration season. Later in the year when the smolts are not out migrating and the bull trout are after the big kokanee, well, then they're deep and they're more likely on the Metolius arm. But, from now through the end of next month, I think you're going to have equal success anywhere on those, on either one of those arms.
As the kokanee get ready to go up the Metolius, have you ever fished the Metolius arm in the fall?
Yes, I briefly mentioned that. I didn't really go over it in the presentation, but they start, the bull trout start staging to go up to spawn and chase the kokanee, as early as August. but in September in particular, they're really moving up, you know, the mature ones, right? So again, go back to the life cycle part of the presentation. You know, you've got some of these fish that are 2 years old, they're going down to the lake. They're not sexually mature until they're, you know, 4 or 5 years old. So a lot of fish just stay in the lake. But, you know, you get the bigger mature spawners, they start staging to go up the Metolius again, you know, late August, September. And if you go up, one of my very favorite trips ever, and I don't do this enough, is to go camp at Monty, which is the campground further up from Perry South. And, you know, from there, you can hike up. That's as far up as you can drive. But you can hike up a long ways. And, you know, September, October, you can catch bull trout in there. And rainbows. It's really quite fun. Again, in my opinion, it's a more difficult fishery because they're hard to land. You know, there's just so much stuff in the river. There's, you know, trees and rocks and stuff, and they know how to wrap. So, but it's fun. It's worth doing. My wife is not an angler, but she humored me one time, and she went on one of these camping trips up there, and she had a great time because we were having elk come through there, and flocks of wild turkeys and 2 Sasquatches. I say that because I actually had a guy in a fly shop one time when I was telling him about going up there to fish. He goes, "Watch out for Sasquatch." Okay. But yeah, it's a beautiful spot up there. There are a few houses up there. There's some private property. The road actually keeps going, but there's a gate, so you can walk up, but you can't drive up. But there's really interesting fishing up there. If you haven't done it, I'd encourage it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
The Monty campground might be closed because it was when we went up, but Perry South was empty and it was beautiful there.
It wasn't officially open yet, though.
Yeah.
Either.
Yeah. So did you go up and look at Monty? Was there a gate across it?
No, there was a sign.
Yeah, there's always a sign. There's a sign that says Perry is closed too.
That's true.
That's true. Yeah, maybe.
We like that sign.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Every time I've been to Monty, the sign says closed.
Yeah.
Okay.
But across the street from Perry South, you know, that other part of the campground, that has a gate on it.
Yeah. Yeah. Now it could be there's a gate up at Monty. I don't know. I haven't been up there in a few years.
That's
but
true.
I mean, if you're going to go as far as Perry, you know, spend a day and go drive up there one morning and check it out.
Yeah.
Do you think you could show the fish ladder videos?
I can certainly try.
Oh, I bet you could.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Ryan?
Yeah. If everybody wants to stay, yeah.
Sure.
Okay. So
I've got nowhere to go.
While you look, I have a Monty campground story. Last time I was there were 2 guys in a big jet sled. The guy who owned the boat had a bad arm, kind of a damaged arm, and the other guy was in a wheelchair. And when they pulled out of there, they were drinking beer, and as they pulled their trailer out, the guy was towing the boat. He had a rope dragging behind him, and the guy in the wheelchair was holding onto the rope and was basically water skiing up to the campground in his wheelchair, being towed by the boat with the beer and his dog in the wheelchair, and it was fantastic.
So this is my blog, and one of the things that I do is write frequently about stuff that I think is interesting in water world and fishing. It's kind of an advocacy kind of blog, and I have thousands of followers, but I'm not going to talk to you about this other than to show some videos. Here's the most recent. I think this is a steelhead from a year ago.
You have to hit your share screen again.
Oh, whoops. Okay, let's try share screen. Sorry.
That's okay.
Where is that? Here
At
it
the
is.
very bottom.
Yeah, I got it. I've got to get back to Zoom here.
Okay.
No, that's not it. That's not it. Where am I at here? Oh, dang it.
Mine's labeled green on the bottom.
Yeah, unfortunately, I had to get out of Zoom to get to that other spot, and I'm trying to get back to Zoom. Oh, here you are. Sorry. You guys still there?
Yep.
Okay. Here we go. All right. So now I'm going to share screen, and I'm going to go back to here. Share. Okay. Can you see my Opal Springs site now?
Yes.
There's like a.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is again there's a steelhead going up the ladder. And you know, these are not real long, but let me just go look at some more. Let me scroll down here. There's less. If you go, again, it's coinformedangler.org. And if you go here, you'll see a whole bunch of my ramblings and angry posts about, so this is a video. So last year, you know, we had a record return of spring Chinook up into Lake Billy Chinook, you know, up through they were captured at the Pelton Round Butte fish trap, trucked up over the 3 dams, released into Lake Billy Chinook. And last year was the best year ever for spring Chinook returns in the history of the whole thing. And at that time, the Crooked River around, well, just below the North Unit Irrigation District diversion was basically dry. I mean, literally it's at 5 CFS. And if you walked out there like I did, you could have walked across it, you know, without getting your feet wet because it's really wide there. You know, 5 CFS, that's 30 gallons a second. So think about, you know, 30 gallons of milk cartons or something, or, you know, 6 5-gallon buckets. That was all the water that was in the Crooked River at the time. And here you had these enormous spring Chinook salmon trying to go up and find spawning. I ranted and raved about that for a long time. But let me find some of these other ones. Oh, here's another spring Chinook.
Wow.
Whew, that's a big fish. This white thing here is about 24 inches long.
Wow.
So that's a big fish.
Yeah.
But if we keep coming down here.
Is there any public fishing access in that lower part of the river down by Opal Springs?
Yeah, there is.
You don't say.
Okay, where is the bull trout videos? Here's a bull trout.
Yeah.
Oh, come on.
Wow.
No, that's a brown trout.
Brown trout, yeah.
That's a brown trout. That's a kokanee. There's a steelhead. Okay, come on. Where are the bull trout? Anyways, if you're into this sort of thing here, we got lots of. Oh, here's a bull trout chasing a small fish. So let me get that. Here we go. Woo! Run away! So, yeah, this must be more than 24 inches because that was bigger than a 12-inch bull trout. So, you know, these are not like, you know, slow-mo or anything like that. That's pretty cool right there, I think. Bull trout chasing a smaller fish. Anyways, if you got some spare time oh, here's a big bull trout. If you got some spare time and you got nothing better to do and you want to occasionally read a rant or a rave from me, you can go on my website. And if you don't want to, you just want to look at cool videos. Oh, here's a kokanee going up the crooked. Whoops, why'd you do that? What's that little kokanee going up there? I don't know. It's confused. And here's another steelhead video. So anyways, I'll stop sharing.
Wow, that was a great presentation.
Oh, you're too kind.
No. It was really good. So hopefully, the weather has stayed pretty cool. I think that us anglers need to have a little outing up there. Let's keep a look at the weather and keep an eye on the weather and maybe try out one or two of Yancey's new places, because Mike and I always go to that not quite the Miracle Mile, but around there. And I had no idea about fishing the Deschutes arm. Deschutes?
We fished it once before, we didn't catch it.
Yeah.
Well, I don't catch it every time I go out there, and it's hit and miss. So
yeah. Because I think the crooked arm we fished before, but that gets the most traffic. I think the most boat traffic going back and forth. But
well, I'm usually launching, at 6:30 a.m.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I don't have,
we don't even know what that looks like.
But we do fish when it gets dark.
Yeah, we're more of the camp and let's be the last ones out on the lake.
Yeah.
That's why that Perry South is nice, because they have that dock. You can just park and go camp.
Yeah, no, Perry South is great. It really is. But I mean, I encourage you, I'm sure you've done this, but spend more time from Perry South up along
we haven't done that.
Oh man.
No.
Along the I guess that's the southern edge, right, of the arm. Yeah, that's a really great spot to fish.
Okay.
Going up.
We actually tried once, but we didn't catch anything.
Yeah. But that doesn't mean anything. Yeah. So I caught a lot of trees that time, I think, or logs.
Last year was the first time we did not catch a fish.
Yeah, but we only went. I think
we went once. That's it.
Yeah. Usually we get pretty lucky. So and even this time I caught a really nice smallmouth bass for some reason. It broke my heart when I saw it, but but when I pulled it out, it was really a nice, healthy fish. So
the best thing that any angler can be is lucky. So
okay, then does anybody have any more questions for Yancey? And I think that you guys can all expect some email blasts from me, and hopefully we'll pick a day and get out there together. But also think about the picnic and the Kokanee Carnival fishing day that I need volunteers. So, and fifth graders, most of them are nice. Some of them are already in that adolescent age, but most of them are pretty good still. So,
all right, guys, thank you.
We'll be in touch. We'll probably have to have you back for another talk, because you do a grand job.
Yep. Thanks again.
Learned a lot.
Well, not that I want to come back anytime soon, but the 3 presentations that I've done for a lot of groups, and you probably don't need this one, the third one that I do is just the Deschutes, like from the headwaters to Trout Creek. So someday, if you ever need, fill in.
Yeah. Well, I will definitely be in touch.
Yeah. I'm sure you guys know more about that than I do as well, but
not us. We're not river fishermen. Not too much anyway. Right. So okay, thanks, Yancey, and good to see all of you guys and the new people. Stevie, good to see you, even though you're in the dark, kind of spooky, but it's okay.
Right. Bye, everyone.
Okay.
Good to meet you, Chris. All right. We'll talk to you later.
Oh, there.